Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're zeroing in on a really surprising, kind of explosive incident from the world of late night TV. It involves Brad Pitt and Jimmy Kimmel.
Right. It's based on this detailed account that popped up online, basically painting a picture of what went down behind the scenes during what everyone thought was just going to be a standard celebrity interview.
Yeah, exactly. So picture the scene. Brad Pitt, he's on Jimmy Kimmel Live, probably there to chat about a new movie, the usual expectations for that kind of appearance.
Totally standard stuff. Bright lights, buzzing audience,
Yeah.
maybe a funny anecdote or two.
But the main thing here, the central conflict, is that the interview apparently took a really sharp, unexpected turn. It went from, like, pleasantries straight into a pretty heated confrontation.
Yeah, it sounds pretty intense.
Right.
So our mission today, if you want to call it that, is to try and understand what happened, why it escalated, and maybe what the bigger implications are, cutting through some of the media noise around it.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The setup. There was apparently quite a buzz around Brad Pitt's appearance, and he was seen being friendly with fans beforehand, sort of that classic, relaxed Brad Pitt vibe.
Right, living up to the image.
Mm.
But backstage, the source material we're looking at, it suggests a very different vibe from Kimmel. Described him as being in a, quote, foul mood.
A foul mood. And difficult with his staff, too, apparently. There are quotes in there from, like, an anonymous production assistant saying Kimmel's always been difficult, but it was getting worse.
Yeah, and that really stark quote, the person you see on camera is not who he is when the cameras stop rolling. It definitely sets a certain tone, doesn't it?
It really does. It sort of hints at this pressure cooker atmosphere, maybe. Live TV, high stakes. You can see how tensions might boil over.
Exactly. So, okay, the initial interaction on stage, it started off normally, right? Handshake, the expected questions about the film.
Yeah, Brad was professional, apparently threw in some humor, just doing the job. But then, uh-oh, the shift.
This is where the account says Kimmel just abruptly brought up Brad's messy divorce situation. And importantly, with what was described as an unsettling smirk.
Ooh, that smirk detail is telling. It feels deliberate. Like he wasn't just asking, he was maybe trying to provoke something.
That's how it comes across in the description, yeah.
Yeah.
And Brad's initial reaction sounds, well, pretty measured. He apparently tried to redirect things calmly.
Right. The quote was something like, Jimmy, I think we both know that's not what I'm here to discuss. I'd rather focus on the film if that's all right with you. Which sounds perfectly reasonable.
Totally. But Kimmel, according to this account, just like pushed back, said something like, come on, Brad, everyone wants to know. You can't expect to come on my show and only talk about what you want to talk about.
Wow, that really disregards the guest boundary right there, and it leads straight into this other crucial piece of information.
The pre-negotiation, yeah.
Apparently, Brad's team had made it really clear beforehand. His personal life, especially the divorce stuff, was explicitly off the table.
Right. And the source claims there were extensive discussions about this between Pitt's publicists and the show's producers. They were supposed to respect these boundaries.
So if that's accurate, Kimmel wasn't just being kind of nosy or pushing for gossip. He was potentially breaking a specific agreement made beforehand.
Exactly. And his supposed justification, about wanting real, unfiltered conversations, not some sanitized PR script, it kind of conveniently ignores that alleged agreement, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. It makes you wonder about that power dynamic, The host feeling they can just ignore the agreed terms. What does unfiltered even mean then?
Right. And at whose expense? So you can imagine the atmosphere in the studio must have just shifted. The report says the audience got really uncomfortable, quiet.
And Brad tried to reason with them.
Yeah, reportedly said something like, look, Jimmy, I've always respected you as a host, but this feels unnecessarily antagonistic. My children and my personal matters are off limits, and you agreed to that. Really laying it out there.
Explicitly mentioning the agreement. But Kimmel's reaction, the account brings up his infamous temper around this point.
Mentions reports of him being tough on staff, even reducing them to tears sometimes, and his alleged response to Brad was pretty harsh.
Something like, don't tell me how to do my job, Brad. You Hollywood types are all the same, wanting to control everything. This is my show, my rules.
That's the one. A real assertion of dominance, basically dismissing Brad's concerns as just, celebrity entitlement.
But Brad's reply, according to the source, cut right through that. I'm not trying to control anything, Jimmy. I'm simply asking for the basic respect of adhering to what we agreed upon before I came out here.
That's such a clear statement, isn't it? It really frames it as professionalism versus, well, something else. Respecting agreements versus pushing for a reaction.
So where does it go from there? They hit a commercial break, right? Usually a chance to cool off, maybe smooth things over backstage.
You think so? But the account suggests it actually got more heated behind the scenes during the break.
Yeah.
Heated exchanges between Brad's team and the producers.
So the violation was taken seriously by Pitt's side. And how were the two stars reacting during this?
Well, Brad was reportedly just calmly looking at his phone, kind of avoiding eye contact, trying to de-escalate maybe, while Kimmel was apparently huddled up with his writers, trying to figure out the next move.
Okay, so they come back from the break. What happens? Does Kimmel apologize?
Sort of. The report calls it a passive-aggressive apology. Something like, sorry if I touched a nerve there, Brad. I guess some topics are just too sensitive for you.
Oof, that doesn't sound like much of an apology at all. More like a dig.
Exactly. And Brad apparently saw right through it, because that's when he reportedly dropped the bomb.
Which was?
He basically accused Kimmel directly,
Yeah.
said something like, you know what, Jimmy, I've been in this industry long enough to recognize when someone's trying to create controversy at my expense for ratings.
Yeah.
That might be how you operate, but I don't have to participate in it.
Wow, okay.
Okay.
That's direct. Calling him out for chasing ratings by stirring things up, that's a huge accusation to make on live TV.
Huge. You can just imagine the reaction. This wasn't just defending boundaries anymore. This was calling out the host's entire motive.
And I guess for Brad Pitt, who's usually pretty composed in public, this must have seemed really out of character to some viewers.
Maybe. But the source suggests that people who know him wouldn't be that surprised. That he has a line, and if you cross it, he'll stand his ground no matter who you are.
So this accusation about ratings, how did Kimmel reportedly take that?
Not well. According to the account, that's when he completely lost his cool. The charming host thing just vanished.
What happened?
He reportedly parked to commercial, but apparently the director hesitated or maybe couldn't cut quickly enough, so some of what happened next might have actually been caught on camera briefly.
Oh, wow. So what did get caught?
Well, the report describes Kimmel getting really aggressive, pointing his finger and saying something like, you think you can come on my show and talk to me like that? Do you have any idea who I am?
That classic line, the power play.
Totally. And Brad's reported response was just incredibly calm and direct again. I know exactly who you are, Jimmy. The question is, do you? Because this isn't how a professional behaves, especially not one who claims to respect their guests.
That is a mic drop moment, if the account is accurate, turning the question right back on him.
Absolutely. And apparently just escalated from there. Kimmel reportedly demanded Brad leave the stage.
He kicked him off the show mid-interview.
That's what the account says. You're done here, get off my stage.
It even called for security.
Security? For Brad Pitt? That's unbelievable. What was the audience doing?
Apparently they were shocked. Gasps, boos, confused murmurs. Some people even stood up, seemingly in protest. They were not happy with Kimmel.
And Brad, how did he leave? The report describes him as being very graceful, actually. Said something like, no need for that, I can see myself out. Then apparently turned to the audience and said, sorry you all had to witness this. Not exactly what any of us expected tonight.
Wow. And then someone in the audience shouted support.
Yeah, we're with you, Brad. And the applause for Brad reportedly turned into a kind of protest against Kimmel as he walked off. The audience was clearly Team Pitt in that moment.
Man, the aftermath must have been absolute chaos backstage. What did Kimmel do on air?
He apparently tried to play it off as a joke or some kind of misunderstanding, but it completely fell flat. The audience was reportedly silent, and some people actually started walking out.
Why get out of the taping? That's serious.
Very serious. Shows how badly Kimmel misjudged the room if the account is true. Meanwhile, backstage, Brad was apparently composed, but firm.
What did he say?
Something along the lines of, I'm sorry it went down like that, but there's a line, and he crossed it deliberately. I won't sit there and be disrespected just because someone's having a bad day and wants to boost their ratings.
Oh.
Just reinforcing his stance.
So he was clear. It felt deliberate about ratings and Kimmel's team.
Totally crisis mode, apparently. The whole atmosphere shifted. There's a quote from an audience member that really captures it.
Oh, yeah.
They said, one minute he was the Jimmy we all know from TV, and the next he was this completely different person, so aggressive and mean-spirited. I've watched his show for years, but I'll never see him the same way again.
That's powerful. Shows the potential damage to his image. And trying to give out free merchandise, that sounds a bit desperate.
Yeah, like trying to buy back goodwill after that kind of meltdown, probably not effective. And Brad, leaving the studio, just gave a quiet comment to the paparazzi.
What was that?
Just sometimes things don't go as planned. Very understated.
Understated, yeah. But then the digital age kicks in, right?
Huh?
Videos probably started spreading like wildfire.
Oh, absolutely. The report mentions clips of the confrontation going viral almost instantly. And the hashtag #SchemelKicked apparently started trending. The narrative was set very quickly.
Shamel kicked. Ouch. That's not good branding. And did others come forward?
Yes, that's another key part of the fallout. Former guests, former staff members, allegedly started corroborating Brad's side, talking about Kimmel's supposed cruel behavior behind the scenes and the show having high staff turnover.
So it wasn't just a one-off bad night, potentially. These reports suggested a pattern.
That's what these subsequent accounts claimed, yeah. Which, if true, adds a lot more weight to the incident itself.
And the network. How did they handle it officially?
Carefully worded statement, you know. The usual corporate speak, avoiding blame, pretty standard PR playbook.
Yeah.
But Brad's team, they reportedly just stayed silent.
Which often speaks louder than words, right? That dignified silence probably helped his case in the public eye.
Definitely seemed to. And immediately people started speculating about Kimmel's career. Could this actually cause long-term damage? In this day and age, that kind of alleged behavior doesn't just blow over.
But Kimmel himself, according to the source, wasn't exactly taking it lying down.
No, reportedly furious. And blaming everyone but himself, Brad, his own staff, maybe even the audience. Trying to control the narrative, even though bits of unedited footage were supposedly out there. Seems like a real disconnect.
Yeah, a disconnect from how it was being perceived, and it quickly became bigger than just them, didn't it? Started conversations about Hollywood power dynamics.
Exactly. It tapped into broader issues about how talk shows operate, the pressure for sensationalism, and the treatment of guests. And the fact that the official broadcast was reportedly heavily edited. That just fueled accusations of a cover-up or gaslighting, as some viewers called it.
Right. People felt they weren't being shown the reality of what happened, and the backlash online continued. Social media, advertisers.
Oh, yeah. Intense negativity on the network's social channels, and some advertisers reportedly pulled their sponsorships, at least temporarily. Real financial consequences.
And through all this, Brad made another public appearance at a charity event.
He did, a few days later. And he addressed it, but very carefully. Emphasized respect, honoring boundaries, said something like, look, everyone has bad days. I just believe that when you invite someone into your space, there's a certain level of respect that should be maintained. When boundaries are established, they should be honored. That's all I was standing up for.
Very measured. Did he say if Kimmel had reached out to apologize privately?
He was asked that, and his reported answer was just no. Followed by, but that's okay. Sometimes silence says everything that needs to be said.
Oof, that silence speaks volumes, doesn't it? So what happened with Kimmel's show then? Did he take time off?
He was absent for a bit, yeah. The report frames it as a mandatory cooling off period, which suggests the network definitely stepped in.
Mandatory cooling off. Sounds like he was put in timeout. But did it cool him off?
Apparently not entirely. The source suggests he remained defiant behind the scenes, still not really getting why people were so upset.
So when he did come back on air, the apology, it didn't land well.
Not according to this account. It was described as carefully scripted, but felt insincere to many. And then he apparently followed it up with jokes that kind of minimized the whole thing, maybe shifted blame. That didn't help.
And Brad just stayed silent.
Continued the dignified silence, yeah. Which, again, seemed to work in his favor compared to Kimmel's handling of it.
So the damage to the show is real. Ratings? Guests?
Reportedly, yes. Plummeting ratings, other celebrities canceling their appearances, the working environment getting worse. There were even reports of more HR complaints being filed and an internal investigation starting.
An investigation? Wow. And the network was actually considering replacing him.
The report mentions the network was exploring options for potential replacement hosts. That's how serious it apparently got.
Meanwhile, Brad's reputation comes out.
Yeah.
Looking pretty good.
Seems like it. If anything, maybe enhanced. He got invitations from rival networks, reportedly, and was treated very respectfully on those appearances. It highlighted the contrast.
And this whole thing sparked a wider industry conversation about talk shows in general.
Yeah, it seemed to. About those power dynamics, about maybe some exploitative practices, the pressure for clicks and controversy. Some other hosts reportedly even announced changes to their own approaches after this.
Interesting. And there was that quote from a publicist.
Right, saying that because it was Brad Pitt, someone with that level of stature, people actually listened. Which is kind of a sad commentary, maybe, that it takes a huge star to make people pay attention to potentially bad behavior.
It does highlight that imbalance, yeah. Not everyone has that power to push back without serious career risk.
For sure. So this incident, this reported confrontation, it seems like it could genuinely have a lasting impact on, how things are done, how that kind of behavior is tolerated or not tolerated going forward.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, then, we looked at this account of a really dramatic clash. Brad Pitt standing his ground against what was reported as disrespectful, unprofessional behavior from Jimmy Kimmel during a live show, leading to this huge public fallout.
Yeah, and it really brought up these big questions about celebrity treatment, media power, and just basic respect for boundaries, both the ones agreed upon beforehand and, just personal ones.
Definitely. So, the final thought we want to leave you with is this. Think about what this whole reported situation says beyond the celebrity gossip. What does it tell us about what we expect from public figures? What responsibility do media figures like Kimmel have?
And is the way we consume entertainment changing? Does an incident like this make you see celebrity interviews differently? Were you surprised by how either Brad Pitt or Jimmy Kimmel reportedly acted? And what does it all suggest for the future? Lots to think about there.